Hi, welcome. I'm Denise Comer, and this is English Composition 1, Achieving Expertise. This is a writing workshop for Project 1, which was a visual analysis on a subject or topic or theme of your choice. And I'm joined today by two learners from our MOOC, which is offered in partnership between Duke University and Coursera. I'm joining you from Duke University, but let's first turn to our two writers in the workshop, and if you could introduce yourselves and tell us where you're joining the call from today.
I'm Deepthi Apte and I'm joining from Mumbai, India.
Hi, Deepthi. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bowen. I'm joining from Austin, Texas.
Hi, welcome, Bowen. Thanks for joining us. So as I said, we're workshopping two people's writing projects. This is being recorded for the other participants in the course to watch later. It's also being live streamed. And if you are enrolled in English Composition 1, you can access the drafts for Bowen and Deepthi on the forums where the workshop volunteers were, and so you can follow along with us. I'm going to go over very briefly the criteria that we're going to be using to look at these drafts. This is a first draft, and then after today's workshop, Bowen and Deepthi will revise their essays also with the feedback that they get from the peer assessment tool. But we have several different criteria that have been named on the project assignment sheet, and so I'm just going to read through those really quickly so they can be fresh in our minds, and then we'll start with Deepthi's draft and we'll workshop your writing. So the grading criteria that we're thinking about, and again, we're not grading, but that we're going to be giving feedback towards, are asking whether the writer has analyzed the image thoroughly, effectively used the image to support and develop their own argument, effectively integrated evidence in the form of details about the image or quotes or paraphrases where necessary. Has the writer employed scholarly conventions for citing sources? Has the writer organized the essay clearly? Are the paragraphs developed in such a way that they achieve paragraph unity? And is there an effective title on the piece? Another criteria is revising deeply, but that'll be the part that comes next. So, okay, so we have Deepthi's paper here, and I'd like to ask you to read it aloud, Deepthi, please, and then Bowen and I will maybe take 30 seconds of quiet time to just collect our thoughts for feedback. He and I have both already read your paper, but it's really good to read aloud for writers. You'll catch things that you otherwise might not have. Before you read aloud, Deepthi, can you share with us what your primary concerns are as a writer? As writers, we usually know what we'd like feedback on, especially. It could be one of these criteria or something else altogether. So what would you like feedback on?
I would especially like feedback on my claim. Is it clearly spelled out, or does it meet the criteria of being an effective claim? And has I successfully sort of developed an argument around that claim? Have I gotten evidences that sound that are good, that are sound? So basically, how it looks as an argument, claim, and whether it's an evolved argument or not. I would especially like feedback on that.
Okay, great. So we'll give you feedback on your claim, and I think whether the cohesion of the paper, right, whether the evidence and all the ideas are working towards supporting that claim and forwarding it. Okay, great. So whenever you are ready, go ahead and start with your title, please, and then read aloud, and we'll listen.
All right, fine. Can I start now? Okay. Female activism in Indian Hindi cinema. Mainstream Indian Hindi cinema viewers are not used to seeing female activism. Typically, in mainstream Hindi movies, actresses are props to actors' matches. They are damsel in distress who bring out the action heroes in action. According to the study by Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media, Indian films rank high in depicting women as mainly sexual objects. The study notes that Indian actresses have very limited speaking roles. There are only a handful of Hindi movies where women are not only in speaking roles but display activism. One such rarity is the movie NF10, released in March 2015 with the mainstream actress Anushka Sharma in the leading role. The above image selected for the project is a poster of the film. The movie centers on the character, Meera, who is the subject of the poster. The actor of the movie dies while being chased by bullies, and it is the leading lady who takes an iron rod in hand and seeks revenge. She is the center of the movie, so it's quite appropriate that she and her revengeful aggression are the only subject and thus the focus of the poster. From being merely an outside placards which listed movies to be shown, cinema posters have evolved into art pieces focusing on artistic interpretations of a scene or even the theme of the film, to be collected, curated, fetching millions of dollars. The above selected poster captures the theme of a woman who single-handedly fits at the patriarchal mindset of Indian society and topples the traditional projection of Indian women, especially in Indian cinema, as docile and submissive. The poster is unusual in its manner of portrayal of an Indian actress. There are numerous such posters with Indian actors in such bloodbath, aggressive, and ready to strike form, but for an Indian actress, this is a rarity. Mouth wide open, you can almost hear her scream. Rod tightly held up in both hands to hit down. She is aggression personified in the image. Her head is slightly tilted down. The posture of looking down is usually associated with submissiveness, but the meaning of this submissive posture has been upturned in the image by an aggressive expression and gesture. The background is blurred so that her aggressive gestural posture and the instrument of her aggression are highlighted. Certain lines give a sense of storm that shows that she is fighting against all odds to seek her revenge. Her physical state, disheveled hair, blood running down her side face, shows that she has been violated against earlier and that her aggression is perhaps in response to that. Typically, in Hindi movies, actresses dress and carry makeup to look good, affirming their prime role of being eye candies. An Indian actress should always look good, irrespective of the character or scene required. But here in the poster, we see Anushka without makeup and dressed wrap. This forces viewers to get out of their habituated viewing of actresses as mere sexual objects who should always look good. In the poster, Anushka is with the vehicle of her revenge, an iron rod. The iron rod conjures up the brutal Delhi rape, which made it something of a symbol of extreme violence against women. That symbol is somewhat overturned when Anushka brings down the murderers one after the other with the rod and seeks her revenge. The poster captures the climax of the film when, after being chased from the honor killers throughout the movie, she finally decides, after seeing her slain husband, to give it back. Firmly holding the rod in both her hands, as we see her in the poster, she strikes the murderers down one by one. This one image of Anushka in her revenge-seeking form perhaps attempts to upturn not only the hundred-year-old Hindi cinema's stereotypical passive portrayal of actresses, even when they are in lead roles, but also attempts to upturn the docile, submissive role expected of women in the Indian society. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And you got a round of applause from Genevieve there. And I should also thank Genevieve for, she's a wonderful member of our staff, and she's helping us run this Hangout. So thank you. Okay, so Bowen and Genevieve, please also contribute feedback in this writer's workshop. Let's take 30 seconds and we'll collect our thoughts for giving you feedback, Deepti, and then we'll provide feedback. Okay, so whenever we're ready, and Bowen, I'd like to have you start if that's okay.
Okay. Right.
Go ahead.
So, first of all, I think the claim um, of this draft is um, there are recent um, women activism in Indian cinema, in the movie scene, and I really like how the author um, analyzes the poster in detail. Um, in I think paragraph 5, the writer mentioned that usually the icon of a woman looking down mm, implies submissiveness, or you know that kind of gesture, that kind of posture is usually associated with submissiveness, but um, but the meaning of this submissiveness has been upturned by the image, in the image, by an aggressive expression and gesture. So I really like this detailed analysis of it. And in terms of coherence, I think uh, the writer has also done a very good job. So I like the writer um, intervene his analysis intervene his intervene her description of the poster and her analysis of the poster, so that as a reader I would become gradually know more about I gradually know more about the picture, and I I'm more and more convinced about her claim, her argument. I think she's done a great job.
I agree with Bowen. I think your explication of the evidence. Oh, we've lost a visual on YouTube too, but you're still there, so I'm going to keep on talking. Right? Are you still
Yes.
there?
I am.
Okay. I think your explication of the evidence is really strong. You have offered a detailed explication of the image, and then you talk about the iron rod, and I think you have thought about her position in the picture and the background and where the focus is, and all of that is really great detailed visual analysis that works toward developing your claim, which is that this movie is a rarity in depictions of Indian female in Indian actresses or female actors, because it's aggressive and powerful and dominant, as opposed to the traditional role, which has been most often in those Hindi movies submissive and docile instead. And I also appreciate that you have connected it to not only the world of film, but also to the larger sociocultural context and political events that have been happening. And so then it becomes not just a matter of what movies are saying, but how it reflects cultural behaviors and practices and traditions. And so that's all really strong. In terms of the evidence, the one part that I thought you might be able to clarify more is in paragraph 5, which is the paragraph where you refer to typically in Hindi movies, actresses dress and carry makeup to look good. You use that phrase "look good" several times, and "look good" can be interpreted in a number of different ways. And so as a writer, what you want to do is be as specific as possible in articulating what you're trying to communicate by that phrase. So maybe not necessarily look good, but I think your point is made up or primped or whatever with hair and makeup, that kind of thing. So I think specify that a little bit more in terms of your evidence. I really also wanted to point out a couple of the great phrases that you have here. In the 4th paragraph, the 3rd sentence, where you talk about her mouth wide open, parentheses, we can almost hear her screaming, rod tightly held up in both hands to hit down. She is aggression personified in the image. I just think that you're really kind of being really assertive and detailed in your argument there, and in the evidence that you're discussing. you and I were talking a little bit before the Hangout started, or official Hangout started, and so you were telling me a little bit more about the background of the movie, and so I do want to suggest that readers who haven't seen the movie or aren't familiar with it might not understand the basic plot until sort of the end. You talk about the honor killings, and you said to me earlier that that was kind of the central part of the movie. So you might want to include towards the beginning a little bit more of that background and context so that all readers, those who have seen the movie and those who haven't, can kind of be situated within the larger frame of what you're talking about. And sure, I did have with citation in the third paragraph, it seems like you're focusing on are you including quotes there from people about the use of posters and movie placards?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and identify, do they come from one of these that the list of resources that you have at the end, or something else?
Yeah, it comes from Wikipedia.
Okay, so go ahead and it's great to have, so with citation styles, generally we think about citation styles as having the in-text, in-text, in-text citations, which happen when you actually use the citation within a particular paragraph or sentence or phrase. So readers need to know at that moment what the source is, and all schools of citation have a version of that. Sometimes they're footnotes, sometimes it's a parentheses with the author last name and the date, or author last name and the page, depending on whether you're using MLA or APA or Turabian or CSE. So whichever style you're using, go ahead and make sure you do those in-text citations. So as a reader, I know that, which source that's coming from. And then you also have the works cited or the list of resources or bibliography at the end, so that as I'm reading, if I get to that paragraph, right, I can see in that paragraph, oh, that's from, well, I'm not sure which source it's from, right? I can know which source it's from and then go to the works cited to see more of those details. And then I wanted to just ask you, too, I haven't read much about film studies, but as I was reading your essay, I kept thinking about the genre of horror films in the U.S. And they often will kind of, some criticism, and again, I'm not really well read on it, but some criticism will say that there are a lot of weak female roles, right, in those films, but there are also sometimes roles where the female characters will vanquish the opponents or come out in the end, and yet still the female characters are heavily sexualized characters. And so I guess I just wanted to, we haven't talked much in the class about counter-arguments or alternative perspectives, but I felt like you might address that you are interpreting this poster in a certain way, and I'm not sure, but I wonder if someone else could interpret the poster in a different way, right? By saying that it still is, she's heavily sexualized in the image too. And I'm not sure if anyone could make as good an argument for that as you have, but they might be able to. And so I think addressing some of that a little bit might help your argument, or at least acknowledging that it could be interpreted in a different way, or why it shouldn't be, perhaps.
That's interesting.
Can I add something, please?
Sure, please.
So in the first paragraph, the author introduced the status quo of the Indian movie scene by saying that, by citing one study which notes that Indian actresses have very limited speaking notes. I've also read about the role of women in the American movie scene, and the similar results hold. I mean, even in American movies, women tend to be in the movie, but they have less lines, they speak less than men. So, since you already introduced this concept in your first paragraph, so an additional analysis of the speaking role of the woman in this particular movie can be helpful to strengthen your argument. For example, in this particular movie, this actress has a lot of lines, and the movie itself is focused on her, so that might help, I guess.
Okay, I see. I see that.
So in terms of the criteria for effective claims, I don't have them on hand right now in my head, but they are generally some combination of compelling, contestable, clear, concise, something like that, connected to the main argument. Bowen, how do you feel about Deepti's claim? We'll just address this and then we'll turn to your paper in a second. But how do you feel she did with those criteria for claims?
I think for the five criteria, I think her claim satisfies all those criteria. I believe so.
Okay. All right. Good. And Genevieve, not to put you on the spot, but did you want to add any responses?
Well, Deep is really refreshing.
I'm sorry, I
Read a
think your
piece on the portrayal of women in the media that didn't mention the Bechdel test.
Okay.
And maybe that comes from, where we are in the United States, but that seems to enter any kind of conversation of whether or not women are talking to one another, and there are multiple female roles where they don't talk about relationships. So I thought that was nice. And I agree with Bowen that a particularly awesome detail was when you say her head is angled down, but in this particular case, it's not a posture of submission. This particular case, I'm looking at the picture, it actually looks like she's looking down because she's about to hit her enemy who's on the ground. And let's see, another thing I would have missed is that that's an iron rod. I couldn't quite tell what her weapon was from looking at the movie poster, so I'm really glad you wrote about that. And added a paragraph on the Delhi rape. That was, God, that sent chills down my spine. And let's see, the only other thought I had was that you referred to the character Mira and the actress Anushka kind of interchangeably, and I wasn't quite sure why you made those decisions. It seemed like sometimes you really were talking about the character, so maybe call her Mira when it's something the character's doing, and Anushka when it's something notable about what the actress is doing. That's all I have.
All right.
Thank you so much. So Deepti, do you have any final questions for us before we turn to Bowen's paper?
No, I have. I have got answers regarding what I wanted, regarding specifically, like you said about claim and all. So I'm pretty satisfied with it. So no queries as such.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And Bowen and Genevieve, you guys gave great feedback. Thank you for that. So now we're going to turn to Bowen's paper, which is on rural electrification. I always have a hard time pronouncing that word, rural electrification. So we're thinking about the same criteria, but let's first ask you, what would you especially like feedback on, Bowen, with this draft?
I think because this draft is about this draft is about technology, and there are some technical terms that might not be familiar with many of the readers. So I just want to know whether I did a good job in explaining those terms so that anybody without any background in this area would understand this. Another thing I want to know is about the coherence of this draft, because in order to make somebody understand something, the coherence, the flow of reasoning is very important. So yeah, that's what I want to know.
Okay, great. All right, well, when you're ready, you can start reading, and please start with your title.
Okay. So the title of my draft is The Future of Rural Electrification. Since the era of Thomas Edison, the power grid has successfully kept our lights on, at least in many places in the world. The grid operates so reliably that we have already taken its existence for granted. An overlooked fact, however, is that 1.2 billion people will continue to lack access to energy by 2030 worldwide. 87% of which will live in rural areas, according to a report of International Energy Agency. One of the reasons for the rural areas to remain in dark is about economic efficiency. To reach economy of scale, power plants in the 20th century are built in huge size. They convert the source of energy, fossil fuel, falling water, wind and sun, a nuclear reactor, into electricity. That electrical power is then transmitted through the transmission and distribution lines to individual buildings, factories, homes, and farms. If an area is remote enough from the existing power grid and underpopulated enough, it is simply not economic to build expensive transmission lines that connect that area. Admittedly, one could get electricity without the power grid. One can get his own diesel generator, but then the transportation of fuels becomes a new problem for remote areas. Over the 20th century, the basic system on which the electrical supply depends, the power grid, hasn't changed much except in scale. But recently, with the increasing strong ability to harness renewable energy, a drastic transformation of the power grid is ongoing. Besides providing cleaner energy to developed areas, renewable technology might be the future of rural electrification. The picture describes a solar panel being installed onto a stone house in a rural area of India where there had been no access to electricity. It takes only 2 people to install such a panel that easily powers several houses like this. Renewable energy is generally defined as energy that comes from resources which are naturally replenished on a human time scale, such as sunlight, wind, and tides. Apart from being clean and free, renewable energy resources exist over wide geographical areas, in contrast to other energy sources, which are concentrated in a limited number of countries. In addition, it is much easier for renewable technologies to reap economy of scale. Just imagine a rooftop solar photovoltaic panel or a small-sized wind turbine. It all comes down to money. Today, the cost of coal generation is 2 rupees per kilowatt hour, compared to micro hydro at 4.5 rupees, biomass at 5 rupees, wind at 12 rupees, or solar at 18 rupees. This may appear to be the most cost-effective source. However, when the cost of infrastructure maintenance, distribution, and grid line extension are included, coal is no longer cost competitive with micro hydro or biomass for areas 5 kilometers, approximately 3 miles from the grid. When you move 10 kilometers or 6 miles from the grid, coal is no longer competitive with wind, and at near 15 kilometers or 10 miles, it is no longer competitive with solar. The simple calculation above strongly supports the feasibility of renewable energy as a choice for rural electrification. Indeed, renewable energy projects in many developing countries have demonstrated this point. Renewable energy can directly contribute to poverty reduction by providing the energy needed for creating business and employment. Renewable energy technologies can make indirect contribution to alleviating poverty by providing energy for cooking, space heating, and lighting. Renewable energy can also contribute to education by providing electricity to schools. Renewable energy is exactly what rural electrification needs: wide availability of energy resource, competitive cost, and off-grid operability. People in those rural areas have certainly missed the golden age of electrification in the last century, when a myriad of power plants, transmission and distribution lines were built. Nevertheless, just as the granny next door who happily surfs the internet via a mobile phone, despite having missed the initial proliferation of internet due to user-unfriendly personal computers, rural areas can and will enjoy the benefits of electrification through renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's take 30 seconds, and then we'll give you some feedback. We'll collect our thoughts for feedback, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So Deepti, your video is temporarily out. Are you still there?
I'm still there.
Okay. Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay. So,
but I can definitely. Hello. Hello.
hi, can you hear us, Deepti? Okay. Well, we can't see you right now, but we can definitely hear you if you talk loudly. So do you want to start us off by giving some feedback?
Yeah, sure. Regarding your concern about whether you have explained technical terms, I think in para 6 you have pretty well explained what is renewable energy. And but maybe at the end of the passage, you have used words like photovoltaic panel and small-sized wind turbines. So perhaps maybe a bit of these things that could also be explained. And yeah, I think the rest of the passages, things are pretty clear. There's no difficulty to the reader regarding any technical term that is not clear. So that is pretty alright. I really like the way you have sort of started the first paragraph. You're talking about the invention of electricity, and then you bring out a contrast about availability of electricity in different parts of the world. So I really liked how you started that passage. It's really good. And talking about argument, I think what you're basically arguing in the article is the importance of renewable energy, especially for electrifying rural areas. So I feel that maybe if you use renewable energy in your title, that would sort of highlight what you're trying to say in the text. Maybe some part of your title perhaps could contain the term renewable energy, because I think that is the central thought of your article or text. So that is one aspect. And again, as for the argument, you have made a good argument. A lot of evidences you use, so basically you justified why rural areas need renewable energy, and how you've done that is in para 7. You've actually given calculations about how cost-effective renewable energy sources can be. I just want to check. Are you able to listen? Am I audible?
Sorry?
Bowen, am I audible to you?
Sorry.
I just missed that last sentence either. I couldn't understand what you were saying. Deepti, try again.
Am I audible? I stopped in between to just confirm that.
You were trying to confirm that we were hearing you? Or?
Yeah. So should I continue?
Yes. So, Bowen, were you able to catch her feedback from before, or were you not? Did you hear what she was suggesting?
Not all of them, so...
Okay, let me see if I Deepti, let me see if I got your voice is going in and out a little bit. So what I heard you say is that that you thought that the key term of the essay was renewable energy, and that maybe if he included that more concretely, right, in certain paragraphs, that might come out more throughout the whole paper.
Okay.
And then
that should be in the title, actually. That was my suggestion to him.
And then you also pointed out in paragraph in paragraph 6 at the end, where Bowen you used the term rooftop solar photovoltaic panel.
Okay.
That was one example where maybe the technical terms could maybe use some explanation.
Yeah.
Is that right, Deepti?
Yes, yes, sure. And after that, I started talking about argument, how the text is arguing about renewable energy. So, should I continue with that?
Yes, go ahead.
So, he made a good case about justifying the use of renewable energy sources for electrifying rural areas. And in passage 6, he gives us some good calculation about why is it so. So that's a good sort of evidence that is used there. And so in a way, that's a good argument he's made and a good evidence he's used for that. One thing I want to point out is the use of image in the article. Actually, there's pretty limited description and analysis, and I would say overall engagement with the image. So I think only paragraph 5 is when the picture is sort of described. It's obviously relevant because the picture is talking about solar panel. So it's pretty relevant to renewable energy that he's writing in the text. But I feel that perhaps maybe there should be, sort of, since this project is about image analysis, perhaps there should be more, I feel, analysis as well as description of the image that is being used. So that can be worked upon. And, right. And I really like the last passage where you talked about this granny who had no internet access earlier, and now she's able to, and how you've sort of shown hope to what renewable energy can do for villages. So I really like that sort of definitely.
Thank you, Deepti. I agree. Just to pick up on that last part too. When I read your line about just as the granny next door who happily surfs the internet, I smiled, and I wondered for a second. I was like, I don't know, maybe he should write grandma or grandmother or grandfather. I'm not sure, but anyways, I liked it, and I think it's good. It's warm, and it drives your point home though, right? That that the cell phone enabled people to find ways of reaching the internet even if they hadn't already gotten the internet from before. And I also very much agree with Deepti's point about the analysis and description of the photographs. So, in Deepti's paper, in her draft, we saw like really deep analysis of the image, and so I think if you can include some of that too as springboard for each of your paragraphs or evidence, I think that would help make the image have a really central role in your argument.
I have an idea for that. You mentioned that one of the benefits of rooftop photovoltaics are that they can be installed with just 2 people.
Yes.
And there are 2 people in your photograph, so that would be a really easy way to incorporate your image. Also, it's pretty clear from the photo that they're in a rural area, but maybe if you did some more research into where or what kind of a rural area it is. You could also talk about the building materials of the house, signifying something about what's available to them. I don't know. I think there's a lot there that could help your point.
You raise a good point. For example, if I can get more details about where the place is, I can use that as an example and integrate that with my analysis For example, how far away is that village in particular from the electrical grid, and whether it is economically, efficient to do so, to connect it to the grid or use the solar panel. I mean, I think you raised a good point there, and thank you.
Oh, and you can see from the image URL that it's in Colorado. I just noticed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
So that means that might be a moment where you say, although this image is in Colorado, right, they have also been developing these solar panels in more rural places worldwide.
The vertex, but yeah.
Yeah, or you might end up discovering that you want to find an image of solar panel installation from, a rural village in India, right? Might be more an image that fits your argument a little bit better.
Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Coleman, your voice is echoing, I think.
Pardon me, DP?
Yeah, your voice is echoing again, so do something about it.
Sorry. I couldn't get your question, sorry.
Deepti's question or my question?
Deepti's question.
Oh, Deepti, go ahead.
I made a question. I just said that Dr. Coleman's voice is echoing again, so I was not able to say at the end.
I think she, because when Genevieve and I talk, we're in the same room here at Duke, so she or I have to mute our microphones, so that was also, I was just saying that what Bowen might end up discovering to do, or figuring out to do, because Genevieve pointed out that this photograph is actually from Colorado, it might serve your argument better to find an image from of solar panel installation from a rural village in India, because you mentioned India in particular, or anywhere else in the world that's rural too.
Yeah.
Maybe this place in Colorado is a very rural place too. There are places off the grid in the U.S. also. I wanted to point to paragraph 7.
Okay.
And since we're thinking about visual analysis, we can also think about the visuality of our writing more generally. And I wondered if this place might not be a really good opportunity for a table of some kind as a way of presenting the comparison of the cost of various kinds of technologies. In a table fashion, so that readers might be a nice way. I got a little bit, I was concentrating on the numbers and the technology at the same time, and so since I'm not in the field of renewable energy, it was taking me a little bit more. I was slower on that paragraph than the others, so that a table might actually help. I also wondered if we were thinking about counter arguments in Deepti's paper, and I also wondered if there are arguments about the feasibility of solar panels too, and maybe you could at least acknowledge that there is cost associated with transporting or developing or manufacturing the solar panels, and I know it's only 2 people as opposed to paying an entire utility company, but so it might be less, but it's also still, there are costs, right? So maybe talk about the costs of solar panels.
Okay. Perhaps it could help, because in paragraph 7, you have talked only about costs related to establishing, I think, the power grids. Yeah. So maybe there you can mention briefly about how much cost is really involved in putting up solar panels, perhaps. There you might put it there.
Okay.
And I'll echo also something that Deepti said earlier too. I like your beginning, since the era of Thomas Edison. So you're kind of capturing readers' interest with something that's sort of familiar, or at least vaguely familiar to many people, and that's a good way in there. So I think those are most of my thoughts. Deepti or Genevieve, do you have anything else to add? No?
I might say one thing. We were talking about anticipating criticism, and You do that in your third paragraph, the one that's only 2 sentences. Admittedly, one could get electricity without the power grid. One can get his own diesel generator, but then the transportation of fuel becomes the new problem for remote areas. So I like the way that you give a nod to the opposition. You say, well, I guess technically renewable energy is not the only way to get it there, but the fact that you pull that out and make it its own paragraph really draws attention. And if I were giving a nod to the opposition, I'd try to bury it in another paragraph so that it's not front and center, so that my argument stands out more than my anticipation of a counter argument.
Okay.
But
that's good. So you would suggest having it kind of within another paragraph, or okay. And I was just reading an article, you all can look it up, in the New Yorker, and I don't know if it's the most recent one, it's maybe within the past 2 months, but they have an article about solar panels and power companies in particular, and it, of course, has its own argument. Have you read that article?
No, I haven't, but I'll definitely check that.
Yeah, look at that, because that might also give you, it's very much about the U.S., so it talks about Vermont. There's a power company in Vermont, and then they compare it to a power company in Arizona and different actions they're taking with a solar panel company, and what the implications are of it. Anyways, there might be some material there that you'll find helpful. Okay, so we are beyond our time of 1 to 2, and so I did just want to, if you could bear with me just another couple minutes, maybe 1 minute, is after workshopping, and this is something that we're doing in the course, is after we provide feedback to others, we think about what we learned from providing feedback, and also in this case from receiving feedback. So if each of you could just take 30 seconds and write down for yourself 1 or 2 things, that takeaways about writing or about this project that you want to really remember based on our workshop, and then I'll ask you to share verbally just one of them so that we can think about the way that that we can all as writers transfer what we learned from one workshop to other writing occasions. So just take 30 seconds and write down a couple workshop takeaways for you as a writer. Okay, so is anyone ready to share one thing that they got in particular?
Okay. I think my takeaway is that it's good to have a detailed description and analysis of your image, and it would be even better if you can integrate it, the description and analysis with your evidence that you use to support your claim.
Great, thank you. Deepti?
I really like the feedback from about citation, because I'm still working on improving my citation. So where you pointed out about importance of citing in text, how it helps people to sort of understand quickly what the terms are and such things. So that is something I'm going to really look into and work on, and I'm sure I'll improve with that.
Okay, great, thank you. Genevieve, did you write something down too, or are you busy doing other stuff?
I made a note that, so I haven't actually done this assignment, but I thought the focus was going to be on explicating all the details in an image, and what I got from both of your drafts was that it's really a lot more convincing if you draw on some crucial details that you notice about an image, but always connect it back to a bigger point.
Great, thank you. And for me, I what this workshop sparked for me is really thinking about alternative perspectives and where to include them and how much to include them and when to include them, and that all of that really plays a role in how effective our argument is, or how wide, broadly applicable our argument is. So thank you all so much for participating in this workshop, and those of you who've been watching live or who will watch the recorded version, good luck with your own drafts and revisions. And Deepti and Bowen, I just want to especially again say that thank you for sharing your writing. You have to have courage to share your writing, and so I applaud you for doing that. So thank you so much. And okay, and good luck with your revisions.
Thank you.